Nathan made was that there is no way to determine whether a certain entity is an enlightened one or a non-enlightened one. At the end of the day, that's a question of belief. Geshe Tashi cited various sources. We would contest those sources. Some of them he said was a fact. We would say categorically not fact. For example, I think he quoted the Ganden Trikpa Nawang Shugden saying that he was against Dorje Shugden. In his biography, that isn't mentioned. But anyway, the point that I'm trying to make is we could argue that forever. One of the things that became very clear is there is within the Gelugpa tradition a very clear lineage of relying upon Dorje Shugden that was held by Kyabdje Chuden Rinpoche, one of the most highly regarded Gelugpa lamas, by his lama, Pabongka Rinpoche, and it would seem completely reasonable for that Gelugpa lineage to be able to continue within the Gelugpa monasteries. We would feel that for anyone to say those people are unacceptable within our monasteries, who has the authority to do that? The Dalai Lama certainly doesn't have the authority to do that. He's not the head of the Gelugpa lineage. Some people would say, well, the Ganden Trikpa has that authority, but the Ganden Trikpa is just appointed by the Dalai Lama, so he doesn't really have any power. One of the points Geshe Tashi mentioned was about the 101st Ganden Trikpa, suggesting that he had lied, which I see that situation in a very different way. Like, in order for him to help his students, in order to promote his teachings, he had to pretend, he had to hide. That's a horrible state of affairs, where someone has to hide their faith when it's the faith, the practices that their own teacher has given them. Something that through their own experience they know is bringing them tremendous benefit. Maybe, you know, I don't know whether it's useful to go through these things, but possibly. Geshe Tashi said there's no scriptural reference within Je Tsongkhapa's teachings for reliance upon Dorje Shugden. Nathan made the point, well, of course not, because Dorje Shugden didn't appear until many hundreds of years later. We would say, as Dorje Shugden practitioners, that by his example, Je Tsongkhapa was relying upon Dorje Shugden because he had Dortsen Dragpa Gyaltsen as his main assistant in establishing his monasteries and helping him produce his texts and so forth. So for us, Dortsen Dragpa Gyaltsen is Dorje Shugden. So there's a very clear example of him relying upon Dorje Shugden in his lifetime. The notion that because Dorje Shugden isn't mentioned in Je Tsongkhapa's text, therefore he's not a suitable protector for Gelugpas. Pauden Lama. Je Tsongkhapa never relied upon Pauden Lama. That's an invention that came later. But the Dalai Lama relies upon Pauden Lama. Is that not okay? What else do we have? So then the quotes he listed, these various scriptural authorities, they're disputed. You can look on the internet, you'll find scholars from the Dorje Shugden side disputing those quotes. It doesn't prove anything. We have our sources, you have your sources. Why not just let us believe and practice what we want and allow within the Gelugpa monasteries that very clear tradition of Gelugpa to continue? Why throw it out? How is that acceptable? Again, you know, the question of Pabongka Rinpoche's activities, that is highly disputed. Previously, that was not an accepted history. It was a certain group of people said he did those things. The majority of people didn't believe that. Nowadays, obviously, history is written by the victors. The Dalai Lama is now seemingly against Pabongka Rinpoche, and what is history is changing. You can read Geshe Lundra Dzogpa's autobiography. He was alive at the time of Pabongka. He was alive during the time these supposed events are happening. He says the opposite was happening. He said Pabongka Rinpoche was just a very inspiring teacher. These slanders of him are completely unjust. He's a living testimony of having been there at that time. Geshe Tashi again, he mentioned violence, he mentioned murders. No one's been convicted of those murders. And yet repeatedly, again and again and again, this slander is brought forward. Surely people have a right to be presumed innocent until proven guilty. No one has been convicted. And yet, again and again, there's this slander. How is that reasonable? And then maybe finally, if I had enough time, Martin made the point. If I can remember rightly, was that the Lama is higher than the deity. Very beautiful. In the Dalai Lama's own explanation of how he came to the conclusion that Dorje Shugden was not a reliable protector, he says the principal sources of this matter have been derived from Dobal divinations conducted before Lama and the decrees of the Dharma protector, Dorje Dragten Nechung, as opposed to what his teacher, Chuden Rinpoche, said.